Hey, I'm Anthony Romano, and I'm going to tell you in this video why insulin spikes are not always a bad thing. So essentially, a lot of people take this view that anytime insulin raises, they're going to be ruining their fat loss diet or something like that. Especially it's popular with people who are doing keto, where of course you don't want to raise insulin more so. But at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you about the real purpose of insulin in this video and when it's actually okay to have an insulin spike, because insulin is not this demon. It serves a specific purpose in the body, and it's great for muscle building, and if you manipulate it right, it's great for fat burning. So before you get into this video, if you could like it, that will make YouTube show my content to more people, and that's all you have to do to help me grow my page. Let's get into it. So many people know insulin as the fat storage hormone. And this is partly true because in many ways insulin is permissive of fat storage. It basically unlocks the door to allow fat to be stored. It also unlocks the door for nutrients like amino acids, glucose to actually be transported inside your cells. So in a lot of ways, insulin is this carrier, and it has the key, okay? It is the key to unlock this storage mechanism. So this makes insulin the most anabolic hormone in your body. And by anabolic, I mean building tissue. Anabolic does not simply mean muscle tissue. Anabolic means building all things, okay? So it can be anabolic to fat tissue as well. And in the presence of a non-insulin sensitive individual, it will be anabolic to fat tissue. Insulin sensitivity is one key to grab hold of here because you want to be insulin sensitive. This means you want your body to be sensitive to insulin so it can use it efficiently and properly. If you are overweight, chances are you are insulin resistant if you're overweight with body fat. Basically, it means that at the very least, we can say your insulin sensitivity is not optimal to where it could be at its best. And when you have insulin resistance, it is easier to store fat. It is harder to build muscle because you can't transport insulin properly and use it efficiently. You cannot, if anything, you have to create more insulin in order to transport things, which is going to lead to more storage of fat. So that's where insulin resistance comes in, and insulin resistance is a big problem. Don't get me wrong. It literally affects like 1 in 4 people. You can look this up. It's very verifiable stuff. And in the long run, you definitely want to keep your insulin low and stable if we're talking longevity goals, okay? Almost all the centenarians have stable blood sugar, stable insulin, and we know that it's a longevity factor. But when I'm talking about the people who are looking for fat loss and muscle building advice, insulin spikes are not always a bad thing. A lot of keto people think that insulin spikes are just the devil and you can never have insulin, and when you're on keto, you have no insulin. That is not true. When you are on keto, you have stable insulin, stable blood sugar. And for people who are confused as to why I'm talking about blood sugar, sugar is the biggest spiker of insulin. So granted, if somebody's on a ketogenic diet, their insulin is going to be as low as it can go while having food come in. But anytime you eat anything, generally your insulin is going to raise because you have to transport those nutrients. Now, here's the hierarchy of what's going to spike insulin the most. At the top, you have carbohydrates. Below them, down here, you have protein, probably middle, so more so. And fat is just negligible, very, very, very minimal insulin spike. Now, because it gets digested in the intestines and basically takes a longer time and gets emulsified. So essentially, carbohydrates and lowering them to keto territory is the best way to get control of your insulin. We know this. But at the same time, people think calorie diets, you don't need to worry about insulin. If you're dropping your calories from 1,000 or from 2,000 to 1,000, congrats, you've just lowered your insulin based on lowering your total food volume. So insulin is always a great tool to try to isolate and grab hold of when you're trying to lose body fat. Don't get me wrong. But when we're talking people who are afraid of insulin because they think it's only this fat storage issue, it is permissive of muscle building as well. You cannot basically build muscle without insulin, sufficient insulin. If you are eating enough protein from high quality sources, complete proteins with all the essential amino acids, you are going to get enough insulin for muscle building to occur. So naturally, lots of protein comes packed with an insulin response that's going to be conducive to building muscle and using that protein effectively. It's almost as if protein is naturally packed with, as long as you're getting enough, an insulin amount that's going to be effective without making things get thrown overboard. Granted, this doesn't apply to all protein sources, but most of the common ones people are bulking with are generally going to be complete protein sources that come with enough of an insulin spike. Whey protein's an exception that comes with a massive insulin spike, and that's the reason why we use whey protein. this is why whey protein exists. It's not just simply a total quantity of extra protein to drink for convenience. I mean, in some ways it can be, depending on the type, but if it's pure whey isolate, that's the purpose of whey, the insulin spike, because it's going to deliver and shuttle all the nutrients into your muscle tissue. Now, this does not mean you have to have, dirty bulk methods that everybody does, where they're just slamming carbs all the time, slamming junk food. This is where you're going to create insulin resistance. You're going to make it harder for your body to use insulin effectively, which is why the keto bulking methods I talk about work so well, because you're basically keeping that insulin sensitivity high and delivering the nutrients, and your body knows that it has to use them properly because it's not getting jacked up insulin all the time. So in that case, when I'm saying insulin spike, I mean, taking you from baseline up. That's not a problem. Having chronically high insulin is a huge problem. So this is the context of when insulin is actually bad. But when we're looking at muscle building scenarios, you need insulin. And here's how it plays into a fat loss diet. If somebody's concerned about spiking their insulin from a whey protein shake, which is highly insulinogenic, it's basically the only protein source you have to worry about, it's insulin spike. If somebody's doing a fasted workout and then they have a protein shake, they're worried, oh no, the insulin's going to stop my fat burning. If you just worked out, you now have not only sensitized your glucose transporters in your muscles to uptaking that insulin, but at the same time, you are delivering protein with no extra sugar, and that is going to immediately get slammed into your muscles because of the insulin spike. So you want that insulin spike there in a muscle building context post-workout. This is why people use whey protein. As a side note, I have an entire video on this. It's not just a protein quantity total, okay? But when we're looking at the benefits of insulin, example, after a workout, killer from the whey protein. If we're talking about somebody just waking up and slamming a protein shake in the morning, that's going to be a big insulin spike. And if you didn't just exercise, your body does not perceive as much demand to use that insulin effectively. Granted, if you're an insulin-sensitive individual or somebody who's athletic, you're going to probably have a very high insulin sensitivity and use that insulin and protein properly. But if somebody starts off the day with a whey protein shake, chances are you're going to slow down fat burning for the rest of the day. But it's nowhere near the level of fat burning slowdown that would occur from eating a bowl of cereal. Eating a bowl of cereal in the morning is going to jack up your sugars sky high because of all the high fructose corn syrup, all the dextrose, all the other high glycemic sugars that are in there that are going to really skyrocket your insulin. And they're not actually delivering any proteins during those meals. That is where insulin is a huge problem, and that's why a lot of people have insulin resistance, because that's how they start off the day. Big fruit smoothie, big bowl of cereal. Those types of things are where breakfast is the most important meal of the day to skip, okay? So don't get me wrong, insulin and lowering it is key for fat loss, for longevity, but when we're talking about muscle building, if you time it properly, that is the key, okay? Timing insulin properly is the best takeaway you can get from this video. So at the end of the day, if you're trying to build muscle, you want that insulin. Do not be afraid of it. People think that if they're doing low carb or keto or fasting, they can't spike insulin. But you want that to happen in a muscle building scenario. If you're trying to just strictly burn fat, pounding back that protein shake first thing in the morning is not a good idea, okay? You'd be better off to time it later in the day after a workout when it's going to do the job for you. Again, the last little clarification here is people think that all insulin spikes are going to turn off fat burning because it's the most anabolic hormone. So if somebody works out and then has the insulin, granted, they're not going to be burning much extra fat as soon as they start digesting that protein. But because they had that extra demand and the afterburn effect of calorie burn, it's certainly possible that they could. But the one thing we do know is that even if you're not burning lots of fat after the workout in that insulin spike, you're certainly not storing any. It's virtually impossible to store fat from a whey protein shake, for example, or an insulin spike when it's timed post-workout, okay? And that's, again, where this distinction comes in. It's all about timing. This is a carrier and door unlocker. It's a locksmith, okay? This is the purpose of insulin, and if you have the appropriate demand and setting for insulin to work efficiently, then it will. It's just about not overdoing insulin. And granted, this video is aimed at a lot of keto crowd because that's what I talk about a lot because I've been doing it for 9 years. So of course you're going to be micromanaging insulin by not eating carbs. But the biggest insulin spike that's going to cause the most problems, because it's not even coming with protein, is like typical carbohydrate Western diet everybody does. Okay, hopefully this video made things clear. If it's not as clear as you might think it should be, leave me some comments and I'll do my best to discuss with you and also maybe make a better video on this. But I think this one hit the nail on the head. And besides that, go to my website, RomanoKeto.com, for coaching, consult, programs that are coming out very soon. And also watch more of my free videos. Literally, they're free, okay? So watch more of them. Besides that, thank you for watching. I'm Anthony Romano. Peace.